Okay. Excuse me. There we go. Hey, it's Chris. We're gonna do a live stream today for a lot of reasons. We're gonna jump into those reasons here in just a second. Boop. There we go. The first of those is I was invited by Games Workshop to go judge at the Kansas City Open, so I'm going to be out of town for about 7 days, and so I'm gonna be missing a lot of streaming opportunity over the next and video making opportunity. Hey, look at that handsome fella. Gonna be missing the opportunity to make some video content over the next couple weeks here as I pack and prepare for that and do all the things that go along with it. And then in addition to that, there we go. Sorry. Sometimes my brain is a little slow. There we go. All right, so like I said, and then actually I got invited to judge out at Tacoma also, so I'm going to be flying to Kansas City, and then I'm going to be flying to Washington, and all that's happening within a 4 to 6 week period. So I'm going to be missing on a lot of video making time. So I wanted to make sure we did a stream to kind of cover all of this. And Nick, my man, normally I would save my announcements for the last because I do agree that's probably a better way to format it. But I think I need to shout out the winner of our giveaway, JD. I already hit him in a comment on the video. I did it this morning. And JD, congratulations on winning the Umbral 6. What's really cool is JD's actually he's probably about 60 to 70 miles from me right now. So I actually could deliver that in hand, and I think that's what I'm going to do, and we can take a cool picture and stuff, and we can get that posted, so that's going to be pretty neat. Outside of that, I wanted to do some faction focused stuff, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to start with the Custodes, and then we're going to look at some of the other ones I've missed, and then I will save a few other announcements for the end. So let's look at Custodes. Oh, yeah, don't look at that. That's cool. Anyway, the Golden Boys. I am already happy that's my YouTube random picker. Come on, come on, come on. You can do it. There we go. Golden Boys. I'm so glad that's how they called them in this. As usual, if you're on Twitch, say hi to YouTube. If you're on YouTube, say hi to Twitch. Hey, what's up there, Dan? I am the sexiest of sexy bitches. The sexiest sexist, if you will. Warhammer 40k, Faction Focus, Adeptus Custodes. Right. Oh, I got to allow that. That's fine. They were like, this guy called you a bitch. Do you allow it? I shall allow it. The Golden Legion. Deep in the vaults of the Imperial Palace. No, I'm not going to do this whole article like that. Nope. Mysterious gene, alchemies, and arcane secrets combine to forge warriors unlike any other. The shining Golden Legion of the 10,000. Where they walk, success follows. Other factions may crow about their so-called elites, but if you really want to feel like it's your finest hour, every hour, an evening with the Adeptus Custodes is the way to do it. All right, so as everybody knows, this is Henry Cavill's army. That's the one he's working on right now, because I know a lot of 40k players are like Henry Cavill fangirls, which is it's weird to me, but I'm not putting anybody down for it. I never really understood why people would get excited that somebody who's famous shares a hobby with you. Again, there's nothing against you being excited. I just personally don't understand it or get it. You know, they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you and me. So why would it seem so weird that somebody like Henry Cavill would play 40k? But sweet picture. You get some land raiders, some rhinos, all that jazz, and all that jazz. I'm on one today, in case you couldn't tell. Like we're ready. Faction rules. Adeptus Custodes, Army Rule, Martial Kata. At the start of your fight phase, select one Kata stance from the list below to be active for your army until the end of the phase. While a Kata stance is active for your army, each unit from your army with this ability gains the relevant ability. So I do I do kind of like how a lot of these quote unquote turn-based bonuses that we've been seeing are all kind of structured the same. You have options. You just pick which option you want active. I haven't really seen anything yet. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I'm just saying I haven't really seen anything yet that restricts how many times you can take them. You just get to pick it based on how you want it to be. So I have no complaints about that. That seems very logical and easy. The Keptaris stance. Each time a melee attack targets this unit, subtract 1 from the hit roll. I don't have any concept as to how good that's going to be because I don't know how much is going to be in the game that lets you ignore hit roll mods. You know, that was one of the inherent issues with Ninth Edition as it progressed, is that you would have a bunch of armies early on that have this ability, and then a bunch of armies would come out that would just counter that ability. And it wasn't so much a rock, paper, scissors. It was more just like, where did your codex fall on the timeline, right? So I do like that, like, it's not bad. I just don't have the context to understand if it's good. But it's not bad. Dakatari stance. Melee weapons equipped by models in this unit have the sustained hits 1 ability. So sixes explode. And again, it's interesting how many things we've seen with sustained hits. You know, it's just one of those where I don't really know how to interpret it yet. It just seems like there's a lot of things with devastating wounds and a lot of things with sustained hits. So I'm just kind of curious to see how this is going to pan out for an edition that's supposedly less lethal. But we'll see. Obviously, we don't know because we don't have the core rules and the index in hand. You know, like a lot of people have the core rules at this point, but the indexes or indices or however you want to say it are not out in the wild, as it were. So we don't know how everything's going to kind of interact with each other. Rendak stance. Let's see. Melee weapons equipped by models in this unit have the lethal hits ability, and if I remember right, without looking, that is your hit rolls of 6 or your critical hits, just auto wound. And I can't complain that you basically would have to pick between sustained hits or lethal hits. Like, I feel like that's a good trade-off. You either get one or the other. But again, we just don't have the context to understand. Like, half of this codex could end up having sustained hits already, so then you just give them lethal hits. Like, we just don't know. But on paper, looks pretty solid. You get to choose between sixes explode or sixes auto wound. I can't complain about that. Are you buried under hordes of teeming alien chaff? Yeah, this just tells you what the. Yep, there we go. Blah, 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 blah. This Aegis of the Emperor protects them from the most grievous injuries imaginable, for the galaxy is full of unspeakable horrors that threaten even the Adeptus Custodes. We'll see. Aegis of the Emperor. Models from your army have a feel no pain 4+ against mortal wounds. So man, I'm trying to explain this in a way that's going to be relatable to everybody. My brain is constantly processing things. Okay, that's just how it is. And I'm not talking from like an anxiety, oh, I left my oven on kind of way, but like when I read stuff, like my brain is just constantly churning and processing. How does this apply to different things? And when I read this, and they still have a 4-up feel no pain against mortals, right? That tells me one of two things. That tells me either there's gonna still be a lot of mortal wounds in this edition, or there aren't gonna be very many, but we want to make sure that custodes don't die to them, right? After seeing all the devastating wounds that I've seen on the faction focuses, focusi, whatever word, you pick one. Anybody out there, just pick one and tell me what you want. But what it tells me is that there's probably going to be a fair share of them, and they want to make sure that custodes aren't dying to them, right? Because that was the big issue in Ninth. Custodes, if they didn't have, and I know it was the Emperor's Chosen, it was only one army, right? One shield host. And if they didn't have that, though, like, you could really mow through them with mortal wounds. You know, I played a dude at a tournament, and he played Solar Watch, and I didn't even have a lot of things that did mortal wounds, but the things that I had in my army that could do them just did so much work to him. Cowboy Larry, I rolled some spicy mortal wound dice on the charge, and dude did like 4 mortals, and then I got to charge with him again because he's got that strat that let him charge again, and that's a knob on Smash a Squig for those that don't know. But he slammed into him, did that, did it again, and I killed like 2 or 3 of his guardians, whatever they're called, um, before I even fought. You know, and I had an early edition codex that actually doesn't have a ton of mortal wound output, so it's just interesting, like how tough that book could be, especially against something like Nids, if they didn't have that 4+ against mortals anyway, and even with it, again against late edition codexes and stuff like Nids, like cool, man. Like you're just picking up your army. So that to me, and I'm just speculating, I don't know, but based off of everything I've seen, that to me tells me that we're the mortal wounds are not being reduced. At best, they're going to stay about the same. Unit Spotlight. When even rank and file are nigh immortal legends of battle, those that lead the Adeptus Custodes must be exceptional indeed, and Trajan Valorous does not disappoint. His Watcher's axe dices enemies big and small, and even packs a significant punch at range. Let's take a look. I'm sure he's going to be really good. I don't think in 8th or ninth he was bad, so I'm sure he's going to be just fine. Ranged weapons, his Watcher's Axe, it hits on 2s with 2 attacks, strength 5, neg 2, 3 damage. Which, I think that's probably not too far from where it is now. But again, I don't play Custodes, so I couldn't tell you for certain. Interestingly, his melee is 6 attacks, hits on 2, strength 10, neg 2, 3 damage. And what I think that's interesting about this is so far, the only really good melee attacks that I've seen have been on named characters. I don't think I've seen one yet that isn't on a named character. Now, obviously, there's things that we haven't seen, and I haven't looked up any kind of like dreadnought melee, so I don't know what that is. I don't know if they've even released it. Maybe we'll dig and look for that. But like Power Fists are Strength 8, Rhinos are T9. So Power Fists wound Rhinos on 5s. So it's just interesting to me that infantry melee doesn't look, from what I've seen, like it's going to do much to vehicles. And that's not necessarily good or bad. It's just interesting because even in some of the older editions of the game, like a Power Claw or a Power Fist could still just fuck a Rhino, right? Because you used to do the strength versus armor rating, and if you hit it on a certain side or whatever, you could really just tear it up. So it's interesting to me that from what we've seen, melee is not going to necessarily. Sorry, I've got a dog licking my toes, and it's a little gross. Melee is not going to. It doesn't look like it's going to have the damage output that it did in ninth. Um, so he's deep strike, feel no pain, 5+, and leader. So he's got a 5-up feel no pain, but a 4-up against mortals because he should get a shield host. I'm assuming. Um, he deep strikes. A leader. I don't remember if that is the one that lets him go into a squad. Yep. Leader is the one that lets you go into a squad. So while he is leading a unit, you can ignore any and or all modifiers to characteristics of models in this unit and or any roll or test made for models. So, yeah, because I think Death Guards still have their toughness debuff. He would ignore that. Why wouldn't he? It's not a true Custodes army if they don't just get to ignore whatever special rule you have. At least that's always just been my experience with them. So it is an exceptionally good ability. It is only one unit. Like, I'm not complaining. I'm just making snide remarks. And he is going to probably be in a lot of lists. Moment Shackle. Once per battle at the start of the fight phase, you can select one of the following to take effect. You can give him 12 attacks or a 2+ invulnerable save, or his unit has fight first. So that's kind of cool. I like that. Like, that's a good selection of abilities, and it's once per battle, so you have to decide which one you want. Do you want to potentially have him stay alive after he's got like if he gets charged by something that's just gonna shred him? Um, or if he's like the only person there and he's gonna get shot at that point. So I think that's a pretty cool ability. I like it. Alaris Custodians, again, I'm not it's the word I'm looking for. I'm not an expert on this army. There we go. Sorry. Lost myself for a minute. So I think these are the Terminator dudes. Wouldn't swear to it. They're T7, which again is interesting. I had somebody I was talking to about 10th edition, and they were like, "Oh, vehicles are going to be T12. This is going to be so cool. They're going to be so tough." And one of the other guys that I was talking to in that group was like, "Look, I'm not saying 10th edition is going to be bad, but all we're really going to see is just things have a wider range. Like, vehicles are still going to die. It's just going to be bigger numbers. Like, nothing is going to effectively change. It's just going to be bigger numbers." And I don't know if I agree with that statement, but it is interesting, right? T7, Alaris Custodians, they have a 2-up save. They have 4 wounds. So, yeah, these must be the Terminators, because I don't think I've seen anything get more wounds yet. I could be wrong again. They've got their grenade launcher, because I think they get everything, right? And obviously they don't get the axe and the spear, but I think they get the grenade launcher and either the axe or the spear, because I think this little thing is their grenade launcher. Strength 4, neg 1, 1 damage. Everything here has AP. Less AP, less killy. Everything here has AP. Eh, yep. And I'm gonna point it out every time I see it, because like it's just who I am, right? It gets 2 shots or D6 shots with blast for the grenade launcher. Let's see. Castellanax is 412. The spear is 412. I don't know if those change. I honestly couldn't tell you. I feel like they used to have like a strength 5 shot, but that might not have been them. That might have been the other guys. Like I said, I just don't know this army well enough. Let's look up Alaris Custodians right now. Nope. So it's all the same. Perfect. The axe 913, the spear 722, and then they get their Misericordia 521. I'm curious to see how the Misericordia is going to interact. If it's just going to be like I'm curious to know if they only get to pick one of these weapons, or if they could take like the axe and the Misericordia. We'll have to wait and see. Let's see, they get Deep Strike and then Slayers of Tyrants. Each time a model in this unit makes an attack that targets a character, monster, or vehicle unit, you can re-roll the wound roll. Checks out, Sure. Once per battle at the end of your opponent's turn, if this unit is not within engagement range of one or more enemy units, you can remove it from the battlefield and then blah, 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 blah. So that's cool. Like, basically, you just pick them up and deep strike them as long as they're not in engagement range once per game at the end of your opponent's turn. Oh, I just realized what that said. So at the end of your opponent's turn, you can teleport them, which means they'll still get their 5-inch movement. So you could absolutely get them in and have them charge, and that's a very makeable charge. And then if you give them a Vexilla, you can add one to the objective control characteristic of models in this unit. Again, I don't know enough about Custodians to know what that is. I don't know if that's like the banner or what, but... And of course, now we have our Sisters of Silence, the Prosecutors. Their movement 6, T3, save 3, 1 wound. So again, it doesn't look like they've really changed. Bolt guns, rapid fire 1, 1 attack, ballistic skill 3, strength 4, 0, 1 damage, close combat weapon, blah, blah, blah. Yep. So again, I don't think they've really changed. Models in this unit have a Feel No Pain 3+ against psychic attacks, so that's I think it's a little bit different, but they've always had some sort of buff or debuff for psychic. And then Purity of Execution. Each time a model in this unit makes a ranged attack that targets a Psyker unit, that attack has the Precision and Devastating Wounds abilities. Um, sure. I'd be curious to know if a Librarian is in a unit, if that gains the Psyker unit keyword. I'd have to go through and do some digging again. But that would just mean that their wounds of 6 do mortals to that unit, and they could ignore leader or lookout sir. They could target the character in that unit. I did end up looking up precision at some point. The Executioner Great Blade. And I don't mean to stop and keep laughing. It's just like we just got done talking about how so much stuff has devastating wounds, right? So it gets 2 attacks, weapon skill 3, strength 5, neg 2, 2 damage, devastating wounds. So wound rolls of 6 do mortal wounds instead of anti-psyker. If it's a psyker unit, it automatically wounds them on 4s, and then 4+ is just 2 mortal wounds. So that is one thing I am noticing with this edition. If a unit is supposed to fight a specific unit, go fuck yourself. It's going to kill that unit. You know, and I'm sorry for the language, but like, this thing's going to automatically wound. So if you have a unit of 10 of these, right? Let's pull out the old calc. If we have a unit of 10 of them, and they make 20 attacks, right? That's not right. Let's start that over. Sorry. If we have a unit of 10 of them and they make 2 attacks to get to 20, right? But they're hitting on 3s, so we're going to hit 13 times. They're going to, on average, do 12 mortal wounds to a psychic unit if you have a unit of 10 of them, which means you're going to average 6 mortal wounds to a psychic unit if it's 5 of them. So here's what I'm seeing, is that if you have, and actually, like, here's how silly this is. Read this sentence right here. If you're planning on hunting down a colossal night abominant, a cadre of vigilators will cut them down to size. So if you have a night abominant, two 5-mans or two 10-mans of these sisters, if they get into combat, that knight is dead. Like, just dead. Doesn't matter that it's a knight, doesn't matter that it's Titanic, doesn't matter that it's a vehicle, because it's got the psyker keyword, all those wounds just do mortal wounds, and you're just picking it up to some chump ass ladies in some power armor, right? Like, and I'm not trying to come across as negative, but this is one of the things that I've been seeing in this edition that makes me go, this is not less killy. It's just killy in a different way. It's not less killy. And again, I could be wrong. We could get these rules and we could get the indexes and it could just interact totally not like it looks like on paper. But I'm telling you, when I look at it on paper, things are going to die just as fast as they do in 9th. They're just going to die in different ways. We will see. So that's the, let's look at these strats. We don't need this open anymore. Use it in your command phase when a custodes infantry unit, except for sisters. Basically, for one command point, you can put a destroyed model back into a unit. And you can't target the same unit more than once per battle. Again, that's kind of cool. I like it. I'd have to see them on the table to really get a full appreciation of whether or not this is like good. But I don't see anything in here that makes me think it's bad. I don't see anything here that goes, oh gosh, custodes are gonna stink. So let's go ahead. I didn't look at the Chaos Knights yet. Let's look at the Chaos. I've seen people look at the Chaos Knights, and I know some people were big sad because like all the defensive capabilities seem to have been stripped away. But I haven't looked yet. Let's take a look. If your army is Chaos Knights, each model from your army with this ability gains a bonus depending on which dread abilities are active for your army. Once a dread ability is active for your army, it applies until the end of battle. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit different than the other turn-based stuff we've seen. Battle round 1. The first battle round, the Despair ability is active. While an enemy unit is within 12 inches of this model, each time that enemy unit takes a battle shock or leadership test, subtract 1 from that test. Okay. Starting battle round 3, Doom and Darkness is active. Each time an enemy model makes an attack, if the target is battle shocked, add 1 to your wound roll. And then subtract 1 from opponent's hit rolls if they failed their battle shock test. So it's kind of like a simplification of what they do now. The first ability you get is a 12-inch aura, and if that enemy unit has to take a battle shock test while they're within that aura, they subtract 1 from it. And then starting battle round 3, if a unit is battle shocked, you add 1 to the wound rolls when you attack them, and it doesn't specify what phase, so that's going to be shooting and melee. And then each time a battle shocked unit attacks you, you subtract 1. So if I'm playing Orc Boys, right, and I fail that battle shock, they're going to be +1 to hit or wound my Orc Boys, and then my Orc Boys are going to be -1 to hit any single one of my opponent's units. So, interesting. I like it. Not a horrible interaction. I'm not sold on leadership interactions just because, again, how weird they were in 9th. I'll have to see them on the table. Overall, I think the Battle Shock leadership mechanics are a step forward from where they were. So we'll have to see how this interacts and whether or not it's solid as it looks. In the Battle Shock step of your opponent's command phase, if an enemy unit that is below starting strength is within 12 inches, they must take a Battle Shock test. For the purposes of this ability, okay. So basically, instead of being half strength, if you're within 12 inches of a unit, if you've lost a single model or a single wound, you have to take a Battle Shock test. And you're going to be -1. So again, that could be really rough to play against. Just because if you fail those Battle Shock tests, you can't control objectives. That's the main thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all interacts, right? Because I could still charge you, I can still fight you. I'm going to be -1 to hit, but like Knights were a rough matchup for Orcs because of how hard they got nerfed in the leadership phase in 9th, and I don't see that really changing. And even like Drukhari were kind of a rough matchup depending on what units you had on the table. Wow, look at that fucking novel. So let's just start with this, right? He starts with the Demon Breath Melt-A-Gun. Let's look at the Demon Breath Melt-A-Gun. It's 12-inch range, strength 9, neg 4, d6. And it has Melt-A-2, which just means +2 damage, I believe, within half range. Hits on 3s. Is he the... Okay, I don't know which one this is. They're all the same to me. He's the Chainsword Boy. He can take a Thermal Cannon, a Dark Flamer, or a Stubber. Well, let's look at the Heavy Stubber. Is it just a Heavy Stubber? It's Rapid Fire 3 now instead of being Heavy. That's interesting. So it gets 3 attacks, and then within half range, it'll get 6 attacks. And it's Strength 5 with 0 AP. Okay. I think that's about how they were. They could have just been Strength 4. I don't remember. You are getting more attacks on average just because within half strength or half range you're getting 6. So the amount of dice you're rolling for those stubbers went up compared to 9th, which is interesting. But I can't remember if this Chaos Knight stubbers were Strength 5 or Strength 4. I really don't remember. Thermal Cannon. 72-inch. D6 plus 3 shots with blast. Uh, okay. It's 72-inch range with rapid fire D6 plus 3. So as long as you're within 36 inches, you're going to roll 2d6 plus 6 shots at strength 10 minus 1, 3 damage. That's a lot of dice. Uh, that just seems like the auto take gun. Obviously, points are going to play into it, but that just seems like the auto take gun. Although you have to lose the chainsword to get it. Unless there's another one. Yep, you can replace his. Oh, do they just have 2 melee arms, maybe? That might be what it is. The Gatling cannon. Let's look at the Gatling cannon. Despoiler Gatling cannon. 18 shots. Strength 6 minus 2, 2 damage. Okay. And then the battle cannon. Oh, yeah. The battle cannon. Oh, that's what I looked at first was the battle cannon. So here's the thermal cannon. It's 2d3 shots, strength 12, neg 4, d6 with melt to 6. So if I remember correctly, that means within half range, they're going to do d6 plus 6 damage. It is blast, so 2d3 shots. I, again, I find it hard to look at this stuff and go, yeah, okay, this is going to be a less killy edition. Again, I don't have the full context yet, but I'm just looking at this going, nope, this thing is just going to obliterate whatever it touches. It doesn't have any kind of devastating wounds so far that I've seen. The heavy dark flamer ignores cover, has torrent, strength 5. This is just a heavy flamer. The ruined spear rocket pod. It's like the only gun on here that doesn't have a special ability besides the Gatling cannon, but the Gatling cannon just rolls 18 dice. And then the Hellstorm autocannons, anti-fly 2 plus. Okay. So the Hellstorm autocannons automatically wound anything. I'm assuming that means with the fly keyword on a 2 plus, and it's twin length, so it re-rolls its wounds. It is only 3 shots, so that's something to keep in mind. Um, that's a little silly, though, especially if it's restricted to fly keyword and not just like aircraft. Because if it's anything with fly, that thing's just gonna mulch anything, you know, like your jump pack boys, Vanguard veterans. Like it'll be good against them. Again, I know it's only 3 shots, but it does re-roll wounds, so it's one of those where it's going to be very good. Now, if you give it the chain sword, you either get 4 attacks at strength 14, neg 4, 6 damage, which I don't think is super far off from where it is. The sweep will be 12 attacks, so it gets 3 hit rolls, 9, 3, 2, which I think that actually went up by 1. I think it used to be 8, but again, I'm going off of memory, could be wrong. And then if you take the claw, you get a strike, which is 4 attacks at 23, 8. Okay, and then the sweep, which is only double, so it'll be 10, 2, 3. So what I'm seeing, if you give it a melee weapon, again, points are going to determine a lot of things. But to me, the Warp Claw just seems like the better weapon and the more versatile weapon, like strength 20 or 8 attacks at strength 10. You're wounding most infantry still on 2s, maybe 3s if it's a custodian, right? A custody. Vehicle walker, blah, 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 blah. Towering. So what I think towering is just the old 18 wound cap. Can't interact with obscuring. Again, I could be wrong. I haven't gotten that far into the rule book yet, but I think that's all that is. Deadly demise. It just means it explodes and does a D6 mortals. Harbingers of dread. Super heavy walker. Those are meaningless. While a friendly war dog is within 9 inches of this model, that war dog takes add 1 to battle shock. And they inherently reroll 1 hit or 1 wound roll when they make any attacks. So, yeah, again, like looking at some of these guns, like checks out. And then if they have 1 to 7 wounds remaining, they go down to 5 on their OC, and then they're -1 to their hit rolls. And then the Psyker Knight. I will have to see if a unit with a Psyker in it gets the Psyker keyword. That's going to be interesting. So let's see. The Volkite Combustor, that's the big Volkite gun. So it used to be 10-1-3. It is now 12-0-3. So I feel like that's just a shift. Again, it's just so it can target vehicles. Like it went up to strength 12 so it can still target vehicles. Down 1 AP. 9 attacks. I think that's up 3 attacks though. Let's find out. I think that is. I think that is up. Let's check it out. So the Volkite 10-1-3. Yep. And 6. Does it have devastating wounds or anything? It does. So wound rolls of 6, still do 3 mortals. But it gets 3 additional dice. So again, like, there's this weird interaction here where we're lowering AP, but we're increasing the amount of dice you roll. And I don't know what the averages come out to be, but I have to feel like it's a wash. So hopefully some of these defensive profiles that we're lacking end up getting a boost, but I don't see that happening. The heavy stubber, let's look at that actually. Okay, so the heavy stubber didn't change other than the number of dice you roll. Because now you roll 3, but within half range you'll roll 6. All right, the Bale Mace, extra attacks, so it makes 3 additional attacks at 8-1-2. Okay, so again, its AP went down, but it got a consistent 3 attacks instead of D3. And then the Electro Surge, sustained hit, so its hits of 6 count as 2 hits. And then, so it's got about the same amount of attacks here, because this is 3-3-3. But it's, let's see, Strength User, which is 8, -2, 3 damage. And then this is Strength 10, -2, 3 damage. So, yep. So not only did its AP stay the same in melee, its strength went up. Its dice effectively stayed the same. Its damage stayed the same. Its hits explode. So again, we have more potential damage output. So, and I don't mean to keep hammering this home, but it's one of those where when I first saw the 10th edition leaks, I got super excited, right? I was looking at it and I was like, oh man, Psychic doesn't just do mortal wounds. Like, this is cool. I don't mind that they're AP. I don't mind that they have this. Like, they just don't do mortal wounds. Like, that is a uninteractive portion of this game that gives the feel bads. And I don't really care that 40k is super killy right now. Like, it doesn't bother me. Like, the state of 9th edition doesn't bother me in terms of how killy it is. What I don't like about it is how the it's disproportionately killy, right? Like, if you have an early edition of Codex that didn't get a lot of data slate love, you're going to struggle to kill things in the same way that a late edition Codex does. So it's one of those where that's where my issues come in. My issues don't come in from the core rule interactions or how killy the game is. My issues come in with how if your Codex came in the first third of this edition, you either needed a lot of data slate love or you're just going to struggle. If it came in the middle, you got nerfed really fast, but now you're probably back to whatever your release was, and you're still just kind of barely hanging. And then if you were in the back third, like, you've just been nerfed, and you haven't needed any kind of adjustments other than getting nerfed. Like, there's not a lot of balance. The amount of tools that are in the toolbox of early to mid to late is very disproportionate. Like, that is my inherent issue. But the reason I keep hammering this home is because, like, I've talked to people, I've read on internet, like I'm online, I see a lot of things. And I see a lot of people going, oh, this looks way less killy. And when I look at it, I don't see that. I don't see an addition that's way less killy. I see an addition that's going to show you rolling more dice and giving you the ability to roll more saves. So you could theoretically be less killy, but mathematically, I think it's probably going to come out about the same. You just get to roll more dice. And again, I could be wrong. I don't have the core rules in front of me. That's not true. I have the core rules in front of me. I don't have the indexes in front of me. I haven't gotten to play it yet. But that's just what I'm seeing. I'm seeing this type of interaction where it's not really less killy. It's just killy in a different way. Desecrator Laser Destructor. 3 attacks, hits on 2, strength 18, neg 4, d6 plus 3. Okay. It's cool. It doesn't do d6 plus 3 mortals on a wound roll of 4, so I don't know. It's probably trash. And then we've got the Warp Strike Claw, which we've already talked about. Use it at the start of a shooting or fight phase. 2 or more War Dog units from your army and 1 enemy unit that is an eligible target for those. Till the end of the phase, the selected War Dog units can only target that, but all weapons gain sustained hits. If the enemy unit is battle shocked, okay, so this strat lets you pick 2 War Dogs, and then until the end of the phase, as long as they both target the same unit, your 5s explode. So, again, very good. That's a very powerful strat. I don't know that there was a whole lot else to look at. I didn't want to dig into the Loyalist Knights because that one just like I saw it and was just like that's absurd. And we already talked about the Tau one. And again, like I don't have anything against Tau. Their late edition codex was just in a like very strong one. I don't like the devastating wounds, but we've already talked about that. And yeah, we're not going to cover that. So I think, generally speaking, that's probably going to wrap up what we're doing today. Before I finish, I did have a couple of other announcements. I did start. My son's been asking me about starting a YouTube channel. He wants to do like some video games, like record them and stuff like that, and do some more stop motion stuff. But he wants it to be on like a he and I specific YouTube channel. So I did start that. That link will be in the description of this video. If you want to see like some stop motion videos, I'm going to share some old videos of him or he and I, and we're going to do a lot of different things. And I'm also going to move like my fitness journey videos and stuff like that over to that channel just so they're not kind of polluting's not the right word, but so they're not competing with my gaming content. Um, like I said, the link's in the description. That one isn't designed or even intended to do anything other than allow him like a creative outlet where he can do things. And, he will never, I shouldn't say never, he will not be alone on any of those. Like it will be a he and I thing. Once I feel like he's old enough, I will probably turn the reins over to him and let him work on it. But right now, he is not at that age. So any content that comes out is either going to be only me or both of us. And so, again, if you're interested in that, the link's in the description. And then so far, I just want to talk about my thoughts on 10th edition so far because I just had a conversation with somebody in our play group, uh, who's super optimistic about 10th edition. Like, like, like almost to a fault. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, right? And I'm not putting him down. But what I am saying is, you know, he's coming from a different perspective than I am, right? He's had multiple editions where his codex has been at best like dominant, and at worst you could still table people even if you didn't win games. Um, but he's also coming from a position where he plays one of the few armies in the game that, like, really just players of that army tend to catch a lot of grief, right? And so he's trying to go into it with a positive attitude because of how much negativity he's had to go through. Simply because, like, over this edition, one of the strongest codexes that's been released in this edition. So it created a lot of feel bads, even at tournaments. Like I've seen him at tournaments where people are just like, "Oh Jesus, it's Tau," you know, "Oh Jesus, I don't want to play against this," you know. And even in our play group, he's caught some grief just because, like, yes, he's an exceptionally good player, but also it's like if you have an army that can literally table somebody in 2 turns, like, it's a bit overtuned, regardless of what you think or don't think. And again, so he's experienced a little bit of a disproportionate amount of just like negativity regarding the game or negativity regarding his codex, right? So he's trying to go into it with a very positive mentality, and I definitely respect that. I, however, am coming from a person who's perennially had pretty much a bad codex every edition. I don't think orcs have had like a really, really strong book since probably third. Like, don't get me wrong, there are good builds, but I wouldn't ever say that the book overall, back to back, cover to cover, is good. Generally speaking, what happens with the Orc Codex, because it is a very large codex, is when it releases, there's 1 or 2 interactions in that book that weren't very well thought out. And I think ninth edition is a perfect example of that, right? When that codex came out, the Jets, right? The Jets were underpointed, and the buggies were probably underpointed. But the buggies to me weren't the issue. It was the Daka Jets and the Waz bombs being way underpointed. Because once the aircraft nerf hit, the Orc Codex just kind of struggled. Unless you played one specific build, competitively the Orc Codex struggled. And I've heard a lot of people talk about, well, orcs are doing great now. That's a great book now. No, it's not a great book. It's a book that hasn't received almost any kind of changes over the last 2 data slates, while literally every army in the game has gotten nerfed in order to help pump up Space Marines. Right? The last data slate that happened, probably 70% of the game got nerfed. And then Space Marines got a buff. And all that was done to make Space Marines relevant. And then orcs just didn't get anything. So if they've gone 2 data slates without any kind of nerf, and then the rest of the game has basically experienced nerfs, of course they're going to naturally just be better. That doesn't mean the codex is good. It just means that GW has made the rest of the game worse. And by worse, I just mean not as competitively viable. So I'm coming from the perspective of somebody who just perennially has an army. Hey, what's up, buddy? Saying hi on the YouTube chat. I'm coming from the perspective of somebody who has perennially had a codex that is just not good. So I go into every edition change with a healthy dose of skepticism. You know, I go into it understanding that, like, it's going to be a middling army at best. And then I also go into it with the understanding that over 8th and 9th, I've seen the fun aspects of my army just kind of slowly gutted. 8th edition, we had the 6s explode, and, yeah, we were ballistic skill 5, but everything was just kind of, like, there was some silliness to the game for us. And then 9th edition came out, and anything that was silly, gone. Just gone. So again, like, we're just coming from different perspectives. So when I talk about the game, and I'm talking about it in a way that sounds like I'm bitching, I'm actually not. I don't mean to sound like I'm bitching. I'm just trying to approach this edition change with a healthy dose of skepticism. Because if I don't temper my expectations, I'm setting myself up to get let down, right? And that's just to kind of talk to everybody about that. In no way am I trying to be like 10th is going to be bad, 10th is going to be trash. I have my own personal opinions on 10th, and I will voice them at some point. I don't know that I'm ready to on this platform just yet. Um, Probably going to wait until after I get my hands on it and play a couple games. Mostly because I don't mind being wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'll definitely say it. But I don't want my opinion to potentially affect somebody else's opinion. And then, like I said, there's a few things about 10th that I have said that I see it, and I'm like, okay. I've seen the optimists talk about how less killy things are. I've seen the pessimists be pessimists. Like that's just the way that people are. Um, but I try to look at this in a little bit more of a pragmatic or realistic perspective. And what I'm seeing is not an addition that's less killy. I just see an addition that's killy in a different way, as I've stated before in this video. So be prepared for your units to still die. I just want to set that expectation for everybody. No, I have not played it. No, I don't know that this is the case. But when I look at some of these data sheets and I go, well, this just does mortal wounds on a 4 plus, and there's no like army wide feel no pains against mortals for the most part that I've seen so far, that's just telling me that we're kind of trending towards Age of Sigmar in terms of how the rules are set up to expedite gameplay, right? Sigmar uses mortal wounds to make the games faster, and I see 40k trending that way when I look at these data sheets. Again, I could be 100% wrong, and if I am, you guys can all tell me, haha, you idiot, you're wrong, and that's fine. I'll just laugh and go, you're right, I was the idiot. But that is the interaction that I'm seeing just from looking at everything on paper. So, sorry for the Midwest goodbye again. I am from the Midwest, so they do tend to be a little bit long winded. I hope to see everybody. I will probably be doing, well, I'm definitely going to be on tomorrow because tomorrow's faction focus is orcs. So, we're going to take a look at that. We're going to dive into it, and we're going to see what we see. Other than that, I hope everybody has a good time. I will be gone for the Kansas City Open. I will be gone for an event in Tacoma. So look for 2 to 3 weeks out of the next 6 weeks. You don't see or hear from me because I'll be working for James Workshop himself. So thanks a lot. Everybody have a great day.